Hello, everybody, and welcome to Music Industry Insights Worldwide. Today, we've got the awesome Joy Langley with us. Hi, Joy, how are you?
I'm very, very well, thank you. How are you, Saskia?
Yeah, not too bad. A little bit cold under the weather, but I'm keeping my chin up and I'm keeping it moving. So, thank you so much for asking. Thank you for coming on the show today and spending some of your time and your expertise with the listeners. We really appreciate your time. Do you want to tell the listeners a little bit more about yourself, where you're from, and what you do?
Yes, okay. Well, my name is Joy Langley. I'm a therapist and a coach. I deal a lot with emotional intelligence at the moment, working with business owners
Yeah,
who basically want to, I suppose, get past the overwhelm, get past the head trash and the emotional trash that goes on inside of us all, so that they can continue to run their business as well. So my premise is that you don't grow the business unless you grow the owner. What was your other question, Saskia? Where am I from?
where are you from? Yeah,
Well, I'm living in Buckinghamshire at the moment. I live in High Wycombe, Buckinghamshire.
yeah,
I'm a London girl, though. I was born in London, lived there all my life.
yeah.
So, but I've been up here for long enough now to, I suppose, to call it home. 15 years up here. So I suppose this is my new home, but I'm a Londoner at
I
heart.
love that. And also, like doing what you do, and obviously being a Black woman, how have you kind of found that and how have you navigated, that situation and to get to where you are now? How have you
Yes, well, it's interesting because I think we're all born the way we are. We don't question who we are or what we are.
found life?
I think it's other people
That's true.
who seem to have a problem with it, let's say. So when you said a black woman, I was like looking around, like, where is she? Where is she? Oh, it's me. So it's all these definitions and all
Able,
these labels, isn't it?
yeah,
That we're given. But yes, I am a black woman of a certain age.
yeah,
And yeah, I've personally I've never had any bad experiences through
brilliant,
being black or through being female. But
excellent.
sometimes it's hard to even say because it can be very subtle.
Mhm.
If I were to look back at perhaps I didn't get the jobs that I wanted, was it because I was black? I don't know.
Yeah,
Or was it because I was a woman? I really don't know.
yeah.
I've not had any overt in my face stuff that I could pull out for you, Saskia. So perhaps I've had an easy time of it.
I'm glad to hear that. And how long have you been doing what you do? Because I know we spoke before and you've kind of done quite a lot of different career paths. So do you want to tell us a little bit more about that and how long you've been doing what you do?
Yeah, well, I've been a therapist and a coach for a good probably 15, coming up to 15 years.
Yeah.
So in 2005, I qualified as a therapist, and I've been doing that ever since. And as I said, I've now sort of moved it across to working with business owners because, again, there's lots of stats to show that going into business, people are being encouraged to do it, but it's not an easy thing to do.
Mhm.
And in fact, it's a tough thing mentally. If you had any sort of mental health problems before, they probably get ramped up by God knows what, 10 times. I don't know, some strange figure. I'm making that figure up, but I know that there are proper stats around mental illness and being in business. Anxiety is a very natural part of the body's response, but we all know that business is unpredictable.
That's it.
So that's a recipe for disaster, isn't it?
Yeah. And uncertainty as well.
Unpredictability.
Yeah, and also
That's it.
the uncertainty, not knowing what's going on and how you navigate that, I think is really, really important. Now, I know you've also touched in the music industry in the past. Do you want to tell us a little bit more about that too, Joy?
Yes, I would say I fell into the music industry. I didn't start out in the music industry. I had really boring jobs when I was younger. I had a degree in chemistry
Okay.
and business, and I didn't get the job that I wanted when I qualified. So I graduated and I couldn't find the job that I wanted. So I retrained doing secretarial PA work, which was fine. But I was bored, and I think it created a lot of depression for me, and a little bit of anxiety too. So I realized that I wasn't doing what I loved. My sister was a singer. My boyfriend was a musician. I met him through meeting her. And in the end, we all decided that we would somehow, someplace, set up a music company. So I'd been in some really boring secretarial jobs, and I was in one at that point in time. And I thought, well, let's apply to the music industry. Why
Yeah.
not do this boring thing over there? Perhaps it'll be more exciting. So I ended up getting being a PA to one of the directors of operations, which was great, and I loved it. I met a lot of A&R people, a lot of I got to go to an awful lot of concerts, that's for sure. I didn't meet any stars through that particular stage of my life, but I certainly went to a lot of concerts. Michael Jackson, there was Janet Jackson, there was all kinds of people. In Excess at the time was quite big news, and even at the time also there was forgotten her name now. How can I forget her name? Anyway, lots of stars that I did meet through them being on the stage. But
Yeah.
later on, when I left that company, I was made redundant. We formed our own music label, and I really did get to meet a lot of stars.
Wow.
I was doing a newsletter. I was also helping my partner and my sister to promote their music. And I was interviewing artists on a radio station called Choice FM. We had a little snippet on there, which we called our magazine Soul Trade. So it was the Soul Trade session. I can't remember what it was called, but that was it. And got to interview Beyonce
Oh,
and the other members of her group because they were then called Destiny's Child. So yeah, that was an exciting time. And I never got depressed, Saskia, not once.
that's really nice to hear, actually. And there's not been much talk in the past of mental health and emotional baggage in the music industry. Do you think that's starting to change now? And what more could we do to support people in the music industry with their mental health and those challenges?
Yeah, you know what? I was watching something recent. There was another young artist who's got a film that's come out. I can't remember names, I just don't pay much attention to the music industry the way I used to.
Yeah,
But she was talking about her mental health and how she'd taken time out and how she produced a documentary as well to
yeah,
help people. And I thought some things don't change, but then perhaps human beings don't change. You know, perhaps where perhaps it's wrong thinking in thinking that this job will make me happy all of the time.
yeah,
Because the music industry, let's face it, it's a job that you happen to love most of the time. It's a tough industry because it's one where you're being judged on your creative output, and not everybody gets to the top.
yeah,
Doesn't mean your music isn't good. Your music could be better than the best that's out there. So sometimes it's the luck of the draw, right place, right time, all that kind of stuff. But people that I know that love music, and that includes you, Saskia, you'd be creating music regardless.
yeah.
It
Well,
doesn't matter whether you're got number one hit or a gold, award showing that you're the best. It's something that's part of who you are,
that's
part of
right.
your identity.
That's right. It's also kind of a therapy and a release, an emotional release of some of that baggage that I actually carry. And I find that sometimes that really, really helps me too, to put it into words and then to sing it and then, express myself in other ways that sometimes that I'm not understood. And I think music gives me that voice where I feel more understood. I feel, yeah, I'm different. And I think in a way in the music industry, by being different is actually one of my specialities and uniqueness. I think it's like a unique selling point for me because there's not many people like me, but then again, that comes with a lot of challenges too. And
There's
I,
not many people like me, Saskia, either. We're one of a kind,
yeah, that's
but
it.
we're all unique in our way.
Yes.
And I know me and you had a lot of a deeper talk about, the therapy space and how the mind works and all that kind of stuff. But, I think even I felt very much isolated within who I am as a human being. There was a sense that there is nobody that understands me. There's no one that understands what I'm going through.
Yeah.
And how could they? Because they're not inside my head. Um, but of course, we've all got different facets of our personality and our identity, which society either likes or society doesn't like. And we very quickly get the message which ones are preferable and which ones are not. So the problem then becomes when you are what you are, and it's not what society deems to be right. How do you change? How do I stop being black,
You
for
can't,
starters,
like me,
Saskia?
you can't. It's just the way you're born. And it's like me. I think it's society today has put a lot of labels on people. And I'm sorry for putting a label on you, but because we do an equality and diversity podcast, I want some of the listeners to be inspired by the work that you've done and your background and where you are now. Because I think having that visibility, that representation, that education is part of the process to making sure that we are all equal. I know that really doesn't exist much in society, but trying to have that equitable do that back step that you can fall back on and say, look, we all start on the same point, but we actually don't, depending on where we come from in our class and our race and so on. So that's really the reason why I said it. So I do apologize about that.
Saskia, do not apologize. We have to be real about the fact that people are given labels.
Yeah.
That's probably a good thing. I deal a lot with emotional intelligence, so this EQ thing,
Yeah.
emotional quotient. But whether it's a real thing or whether it's a false thing, I don't know. But it's about being aware of who you are. That means learning more about yourself so
Yes.
that you can be around other people and perhaps be more tolerant. But it starts with us. So self-awareness is the top of the tree with emotional intelligence. And then that allows you to be perhaps tune in a bit more to what other people are feeling. But it starts with us. It starts
Yeah.
with us. So I've got no problem with you saying that at all. It's
Thank
it's a reality.
Yeah. I just don't want to offend you or anyone else. So yeah, that's all it was. Like I really am a caring person and I'm kind and I just don't want to see anyone offended because I don't agree with that.
I think we spend far too much time perhaps trying not to be offensive, which I'm not saying that's a bad thing. I don't go around deliberately offending people,
Mm.
but there is a part of us that has to be honest about the way the world is. Um, and when we use the titles, that kind of ownership thing,
Yeah.
we're owning the title, no, haven't got a problem with that. I think there's a lot of room for honesty and diversity and equity. Um, a big conversation, you know. First of all, we have to acknowledge that there is a problem. That's been the biggest hurdle, isn't it?
Yeah.
And then we have to work out ways to address it.
Mhm.
And then we have to encourage society to take on board those ideas as a whole.
Yeah.
As we know, that's a very long road. Uh, I'm sure that there are lots of inroads that are being made, especially around,
Yeah.
color, gender, sexuality, ageism, it's all the isms, ageism, racism,
Yeah.
ableism. There's so many reasons why we can be put on the sidelines. But I always want to question, Saskia, who made these rules up in the first place to say that this person, Mr. X or Miss X, they are the thing that we should be following. Who says that they're the norm?
Yeah.
There's something going on, isn't there, where we've got an idea that something is, quote unquote, normal.
Yeah.
Ah,
Which I don't know what is myself. Do you know what I mean? Everyone's different, and that's the beautiful thing about life. If we were all the same, that'd be extremely boring, wouldn't
it
it?
would be boring, actually. And I think we get bored with each other. And
Definitely.
and I'm not pro conflict, but conflict means that you have a point of view that's different to mine. And if we are both adult about it, we can sit down and we can talk about those differences. It's not about me trying to convince you that my way is the right way, or you trying to convince me that your way is the right way. This is what all the warring around the world is all about, isn't it? And other layers of that. So, differences are good. We just have to talk about them and be open about them and see whether it's preventing somebody else from moving on because of the view. Are my views stopping you from getting on in the world, Saskia? Or are your views stopping me from getting on in the world? And if we
I
can sit down and have a conversation about that,
hear that.
then we're beginning to, I would think, what, change society?
Yeah, that's
What a
it.
big, we're gonna put the world to right in this half an hour that we're talking together.
Well, we hope we make a difference. Let's just put it that way. It's about positive change and difference and sharing information and learning from one another because that's beautiful too. I learn every day. I'm learning new things. And I just want to ask you this question, Joe, like this emotional intelligence and all this baggage that people carry around, let's say as well, emotional baggage as well as intelligence. How did you figure that out, like in business spaces? And how did you know that was a problem? And how did you devise a company that deals with that specific area?
Yeah, that's a good question. And I think, being in the therapy space for such a long time, I feel that I've been emotionally intelligent without the title,
Mm,
basically. There's been lots of researchers do stuff in the background, and then there's a book by Daniel Goleman
okay.
called Emotional Intelligence. So he's become the forerunner for this whole kind of like bringing it overground, but he wasn't the person that came up with it. But it's really about understanding yourself and, beginning to question, who am I? Why am I this way? Why do I do what I do? You're looking at your emotions in particular. You're looking at, call it emotional regulation,
Yeah.
but it's just understanding the way in which your emotions work, where they come from, So they come from my point of view. They're generated within everybody, in our gut, within reason, and there's nerves that then send a signal up our back to our base of our spine, into our head, and the brain turns that feeling, that sensation into a word, a
Right.
feeling. So the word feelings and emotions are they get crossed basically. So there's no point trying to separate it out. And it gets even more confusing when you ask someone, what do they think? And they say, well, I feel that. And it's like, I didn't ask you what you felt. I asked you, what do you think? So people get everything muddled up. But emotions are part of human life. They guide a lot of what we do. They also trigger the stress response. So it's really quite interesting that we have to understand what our emotions all about. How do I mine get triggered? What sets me off? How do I calm myself down? What environments trigger it that don't, you have to really begin to be curious, I suppose,
And
about what makes you you.
yeah,
And then within the whole emotional intelligence stuff, there's the emotions and it's understanding them, it's the regulation of your emotions so that you're within reason in a good space. And then you're supposed to share that knowledge in terms of, I can now understand you, Saskia. We can be in a relationship and I can understand you and extend that kind of kindness and compassion towards you. And
yeah,
then there's just that social interaction. So there's a social interaction, so more people, all that kind of stuff. It's just about people and
yeah,
whether we get on or not.
yeah.
And it provides you with a system to think about it.
And do you think a lot of it stems from childhood and trauma, the way we feel and how we think?
I don't know if I would say it stems from trauma. I would encourage us to recognize that if we created a human being, me and you sat down, Saskia, today, and we had this blank canvas, this real human being with nothing put into it, and we said, well, we have to give it something to make it feel kindly towards people. We have to give it something to make it aware when it should be frightened of things. We'd start creating, hormones and feelings and give it a heart that beats and all kinds of stuff. We do all of that stuff to try and make this 1D thing into a proper 3D human being. So we
Yeah,
would do things. So within reason, perhaps we're all given the basics around the body, the
yeah,
biology and the mental stuff, brain, etc. But you're quite right. How we then progress through life is going to impact why you have a certain perspective on life that's very different to mine. And then if we found another third person, theirs would be completely different to ours. So the question would be, but life is happening to all three of us. Shouldn't we all have the same experience?
and we see it through
So
different things, don't we?
yeah. So cognitive behavioral therapy is a strand of therapy where it looks at it's not what happens to you that's the problem in life. It's
Yeah,
how you perceive it. It's what you think.
right.
It's the meanings that you give it. It's the beliefs that you hold. And yeah, where do we pick all of those from up? All of those from? It's really when we're growing up.
Yeah,
You're absolutely right in terms of growing up, blah, blah, blah. My life's different to yours. I was brought up in a different way to yours. So I just have different ideas about the world because that's what I've been given. But I know that as an adult, we have a responsibility to review that because we can change it.
that's right. And I've done a lot of that myself, self-learning about myself, my emotions, my feelings, my background, some of the trauma I've been through. So I know all of that shapes me as a person, yeah, and the way I see things today. So I do a lot of that actually. And I found that maybe meditation, prayer, going for a walk, and even being in the music industry, I actually feel a bit more accepted because there's a lot of people with different challenges and issues that we can kind of relate to in different ways. So I think in that kind of space, that's what I enjoy about it as well, is that it is different. It is kind of a unique little bubble of people in there that have differences and they write about those and they sing about them and they kind of champion them too to make other people feel that they're not alone.
And I agree with you about using your talents and your creative talents, and me using my talents, my creative talents to help the world, basically. I mean, what can we do when we're doing what we love and what we're passionate about and what we're skilled at?
Mm,
From my point of view, it just makes me feel good,
good.
Saskia. So if I share it with the world, if it's like I'm sharing my goodness with the world and the world's feeling good, I'm like, that's a nice little circle,
It
nice
is.
virtuous circle happening there. But with the music industry, I mean, we did have a little talk about this, Saskia. I wasn't aware of all the discrimination that happens. I was aware of it on a level of like black and white music, and perhaps, when I was growing up, black people didn't create rock music, and rock people didn't create soul music because I was into soul and reggae. There were some kind of divides, and then they get a little bit blurred. And for me, that's probably as far as my uh, differences or diversity and equity issues go. And you've been sharing a lot of stuff with me. So you've been opening my eyes to
Oh,
what
thank
else is happening. Because I'm kind of removed from the music business now, as you can
you.
see.
Yeah,
I'm a very well established therapist and coach. So,
yeah.
like, yeah, so it's like I'm not in the music business, but when I was, um, perhaps perhaps I was mixing in the wrong circles. Don't know. You tell me what exactly is happening.
Well, I suppose some people don't see it. And I suppose when you're in a certain environment or in a certain genre, you might not have seen that then because you was more segregated than what we are now, possibly. So you might not have seen some of that stuff that was going on. And you just thought, okay, that's how it works. And I think now we're integrating a little bit more. We're sharing more stories. We're actually getting the research to back up what people are saying as well. Because I'm sure back then there wasn't that much research available to show the actual differences in male and female, in black and white people, or any ethnic diversities, So I think now we're starting to collect that data and we're starting to see, okay, where are we? How can we measure this? How can we improve on it? And what's causing these issues? And I think that's bringing out a lot of conversations. And it's also ensuring that we are becoming more inclusive and diverse, because I think they are kind of different. Diversity is one thing, but inclusion is another. So ensuring that we are being inclusive and diverse is extremely important. Yeah.
Wow, this is a conversation that I never even thought about, apart from the fact that at the time when I was really getting into music in my mid-30s with my sister and my boyfriend and the label that we had,
Mm,
it was soul music that we were producing. There was reggae music, there was rap music, and British music wasn't respected. Only American music was respected. So that's kind of the divide that I had. It was more of a uh, American versus British.
yeah.
So that's what we had, and we eventually, as Brits, we created our own sound, which was a mixture of the heavy bass line from the reggae music in with the soul music, and we created a sound of our own, which was, I think it was called British Soul. Probably, I mean, it's such a long time ago, but it was British Soul, and it was like the heaviness of the reggae music, which was part of my heritage. We just couldn't help but put it into music. We had to feel that one beat, that heartbeat, the Bob Marley-ness of the whole thing, we just had to feel it, but within the soul music. So yeah, that's interesting. I wasn't aware of discrimination, dare I say, or differences beyond that. Male to female, fair enough. I knew that the pop world was a little bit sexist in terms of men and women were put into categories, and women had to wear certain things. We had to be sexy and half naked and whatever. That was the thing for women. And perhaps certain women could only sing certain songs, but it's obviously got a lot deeper and broader and wider since the time that I've been in the business.
And being a therapist, like, and if you look into your own kind of, your sphere of work, do you find that that's inclusive and diverse?
Do you mean the people that I work with or the way that I work?
No, not the people you work with. Say, do you see a lot of other therapists and coaches like yourself in your positions, or do you find that it's generally just a few of you?
I'm hesitating there because I want to say, yes, it's diverse and there is diversity. There are a lot more Black therapists, there are a lot more coaches that are Black as well, and there are a lot more men, I would say, that are entering the therapy space. The reason why I hesitated is probably because, in terms of who rises to the top and who becomes well known,
Yeah,
I'm trying to think. The only person I can think of that in my head that straddles that is like Oprah. And
yeah,
she really was the top. She got right to the top of the whole food chain, didn't she?
yeah.
But she didn't classify herself as a therapist. I'm trying to think of a Black therapist that I know is famous, and
Don't
I
know
can't
many.
grasp any.
Yeah, I don't know
I
many.
can't grasp any. And there
I,
probably is if I did a bit of digging.
yeah.
But around me, a lot more therapists have come through who are from different backgrounds, and we definitely need that
Mhm.
because our attitude affects the person that we are in front of. And we have to be able to iron out, as a therapist, we have to be ironing out all of our own differences and our own prejudices and, doing our own therapy on us so that we're not going to be, as you said, affecting somebody
Yeah,
that's
yeah.
in front of us and just trying to be open, honest, transparent, um, compassionate. These are all the qualities that you'd expect from a good human being, but definitely
I
I'd
think,
expect it from a therapist.
yeah, thank you. I love that. And if someone was struggling with their own kind of emotional feelings or their emotional intelligence, what kind of clients would come to you and how would they know that they needed to come to someone like yourself?
Yeah, that's another good question because I, people could see me for all kinds of reasons. I've kind of specialized in stress, anxiety, and depression, all the sort of happy topics. But it's because I've been there myself, I suppose, in terms of depression and anxiety. And I just know how awful it is. But also, it's a common thing. I
Yeah.
want people to know that it's not something that you get rid of. You don't get rid of anxiety. You don't get rid of stress. You don't get rid of depression. Everything has a purpose. And if we're looking at stress, stress is the body's right way of responding to excessive pressure. One day I might be good at responding to that pressure. The next day I'm not so good at responding to it. But the stress that gets set up inside of my body sets off a whole chain reaction where my body is responding. The heart might be beating faster. I might be trying to get more oxygen to my brain. I might be shutting down my stomach so it's not having to overwork because it's focusing on the danger. So
Mm.
stress has its own biological response, which is
Right.
necessary.
Yeah.
So when people say about getting rid of stress, I'm thinking like if you get rid of stress, you're probably going to go and do something crazy like jumping off a cliff and thinking it's a great idea and you're going to die. So it's kind of stress is there also to make us be aware of what's around us too. So when I look at depression and anxiety, if we're looking at what's the purpose of stress, what's the purpose of depression and anxiety, in the same way that we looked at the way that stress is, depression for me was just a way of telling my body that there was something that I wasn't happy with. And I began to use that a lot when I was down. I think, well, there's just something around you, Joy, that you're not happy with. What
Yeah.
is it?
Yeah.
Is it your job? Invariably, it was my job. Then obviously, if I got a partner, it's my partner, but there's always something that you can look at and decide that this isn't the way I want it to be.
Mm.
So if we're looking at the word depressed to kind of to push down, we're kind of feeling down, we're pushing feelings down. So depression has a role. And it might be a question of asking ourselves, the better question might be, if this were purposeful,
Yeah.
what would it be trying to tell me? What message would depression be trying to tell me right now
Yeah.
about my life? Because we're always trying to move from this place of being low
Yeah.
to a place of high. We're trying to move back to it. So
Yes.
depression is trying to tell you there's something wrong. And it's probably asking you, can we fix this? Or how can we fix this? Now, anxiety is linked a lot to stress because anxiety is the feeling that we get before it kicks off the stress response, which
Yeah.
is that prediction that, oh dear, that thing I'm about to do, it's dangerous. It could be just sending an email, it could be making a call,
Something's
it
gonna
could be
happen.
going on and singing, stage fright,
Yeah.
like what am I saying to myself just before I go on the stage and sing or record something? Am I telling myself I'm going to be rubbish at this? Or am I telling myself I'm going to be great at this? Because whatever you tell yourself is going to impact what the quality of your performance.
Excellent. Thank you so much for sharing that. And that makes me think again and again, it's what you tell yourself and how you manage. And I think this is what you're trying to say. It's not going to go away, Saskia, but it's how you manage your emotions and your feelings. Is that right?
I think that's absolutely right, Saskia.
So if
Spot
someone,
on.
thank you so much. So if someone needed to get some help and support from you, how long would they need? Is it a set by set? Is it bespoke to the person, or do you give them set sessions? And how much do they cost in general?
Yeah, I must admit I don't work in that kind of sessional way as
Yeah,
much as I used to.
yeah,
But obviously back in my old life, and obviously there are therapists that still continue to work like that, which is fine. You work by sessions, and it can be for, between up to an hour. It can be a little bit more.
Yeah.
You might need, depending on what you're looking at and how bad things are, I would say at least 4 sessions would be good. First one, getting to know me, getting to know you, finding out, what's going on for you. That's what I would be doing. And then the subsequent sessions are looking at some tactics or strategies that we can put in place, or some frameworks that we can work around to help you to, as I said, change your perspective around what you think and what you feel and what you do. So 4 sessions are great. Of course, I would recommend that people have more. If
Yeah.
they can have 6 to 8 sessions, that would be fabulous. And if you can then tap back into that every month or so until you feel you don't need it.
Yeah.
So it's a bit of it's like learning something new, like learning to drive a car. You
Yeah.
know, you're not going to be great at it the first time driving a car. You can get better at it. Even when you passed your test, you're still a bit nervous, aren't you? And a bit anxious about it. So learning about how the body works from a perspective that no one's ever told you how it works, or how your mind works,
Yeah.
and no one's ever told you how that works either. Um, I would encourage people to be curious, to work with people who do know what they're doing and can take you to those different levels.
Yeah.
Doesn't always necessarily have to be a therapist. It
Okay.
can be a coach. Coaches are quite, if you're a really good coach, you're taking on board lots of ideas.
Yes.
And the difference between a coach and a therapist, because people always say, well, what's the difference, Joy?
Yeah.
Um, a
That's good.
therapist tends to look at the past, or has the ability to at least look at your past and look at your history and talk to you about that. And as you said, where's all this baggage coming from? Do a little bit of analysis around that. That's our bread and butter. That's what we do. Um, a coach tends to work from where you are in the present moment and not look backwards. They look forward.
I love
So they're
that.
looking forward at the future. They're saying, okay, Saskia, so you're saying that's the situation at the moment, but what can we do to change it? Who could we talk to? Where could we go to?
Yeah.
And really, um, if they're skilled in doing the looking back at the past, then do it by all means. But I do know that that requires a little bit more care.
Yeah.
I'm always very concerned, and I'm very wary of
It can be hard.
triggering something which I can't lock down in that
Yeah.
moment. So if
Yeah.
I'm in a session, I'm very, very aware that I don't want to open up this box of stuff and then send you away, and you've got to deal with it by yourself until you see me again.
Yeah.
It doesn't quite work that way. So I'm always very mindful of how are we talking about the problems? How am I getting you to look at who you are now? And is it based on what you were? Is it based on what you used to think? Was it based on what your beliefs are? Because I'm always thinking, well, that's what it was. And why do you think you had that? Just curiosity. Why do you think you had that? So you can get curious about, yeah, I think it might be because of this, Joe. I think, great, you know, and then we move forward. And there's a lot of like theory now just around trauma and re-traumatizing people.
Yeah.
Something which, when I was being trained, wasn't really spoken about, even though I felt it didn't feel right
Yeah.
to visibly, say physically, but visibly upset people in front of me and ask them deep probing questions,
Yeah.
especially if it might be to do with something that's really, really sensitive. It could be to do with, child abuse. It could be sexual. Abuse is a big thing,
Yeah.
that you can trigger all kinds of things, and we can re-traumatize you,
Yeah. That's
which
true.
I felt at the time was real, but it wasn't really spoken about now. So I'm very, very concerned about not re-traumatizing people. You've been through the pain once. I don't have to drag you through it again. But there are ways of talking about a subject that's sensitive in a way that, at least helps you to put it to rest and move forward. And
Yeah.
there are other techniques beyond what I do,
Yeah.
which definitely look at that whole aspect of trauma. People that specialize in trauma
Yeah.
therapists.
Okay, Joy. And if anyone wants to find you or connect with you or find out more about your services, where could they connect with you or find you?
Yes, I'm on LinkedIn a lot of the time. So if you look for Joy Langley,
Yeah.
Langley, look for Joy Langley, you'll find me there. I also have a website. It's joylangley.com. So that's JoyLangley.com. And as I said, I mean, in terms of the therapy, I'm not working in in the old way that I used to work. So even though I have the therapy knowledge and everything else, I'm now applying it to a lot of business owners. But that doesn't mean that you can't contact me and ask me a question if you want to.
I love
But there are lots of therapists out there. There's a very good directory out there called the Counselling Directory. You can find lots of people in there. It's a UK-based one, but I'm sure there are US-based ones because there are lots of therapists.
Yeah,
You know, the
yeah,
bigger question is how to find one that suits me. And there are lots of companies now that have got these the apps to do with therapy, and there's lots of ones where you can do the just the telephone therapy, written therapy.
yeah.
I don't keep on top of the names. I mean, they're, but I know that they exist.
That's
It's a
okay.
wider market. It's not so narrow anymore. It's
Yeah.
more accessible to people,
And
which is a good thing.
I'll leave those links in the description below so people can find you and also hopefully find a counsellor or coach if they need one. And I just want to say thank you so much for taking the time. We've literally got 2 minutes left. So before we go, is there any major wins or successes or any tips or hints you'd like to share with the listeners before we go?
My big tip would be, be careful of what you think and pay attention to what you think. Everything starts with a thought, then the thought will lead to an emotion, and your emotions will lead to what you do. And there's a lovely cycle between that. So it's breaking that cycle if it's a negative cycle.
Yeah.
Thoughts are important, and just, yeah, be careful what you think.
Look after yourself. I love that. Thank you again, Joy. It's been an absolute pleasure to talk to you again. I'm wishing you all the best and keep up the amazing work. And I hope to see you soon.
And thank you very much, Saskia, and I wish the same for you.
Pleasure. Thank you. Thanks. Bye. Stop the recording. Where's it gone? Oh, let's change the thing for me. Stop. Stop recording.